Hello, hello. Welcome to Courage Becomes Her, where we connect and share real life stories. I'll talk with women whom I love and am inspired by, women who are experiencing life just like you and me. I'm excited for us to gather together and cultivate confidence, courage, and joy in life and work.
It wasn't to me that I was putting a priority on work over my family, but I felt like I needed work to go well to take care of my family. And so I let that really, I didn't have good boundaries for a long time. And so that was a problem that Earl and I really had to work through. He could let go easier than I could when it was time to go home.
That was Reena Philpot. I am so thrilled to have Reena join us for this conversation today as we kick off a new series, which I'll tell you about in just a second. So Reena is a lifelong Kentucky gal, which you'll be able to know immediately by hearing her voice. She and her husband, Earl, are high school sweethearts who have been married for over 30 years. They have 2 adult sons and are about to gain their first daughter-in-law. And I just love Reena. I am so inspired by her. She is a super fun person and she loves fashion and decor and design and colors and thrifting. And she finds these incredible things through thrifting that she then either turns into something magical for herself or she resells it. She recently had a couple of TikTok videos go viral with 40 and 50,000 views, which is just super, super fun. So in today's conversation, Reena and I are kicking off this series of journeying through the blessings and burdens of marriage. And I want to read you something from Tim Keller that he says about marriage. He says, while marriage is many things, it is anything but sentimental. Marriage is glorious but hard. It's a burning joy and strength, and yet it is also blood, sweat, and tears, humbling defeats, and exhausting victories. Whew, my goodness. So in today's conversation and kicking off the series, I asked Reena to join me because she and Earl have owned a business for over 20 years. They've worked together for 24 years, and they really have figured out how to navigate each other's personalities and characteristics and the differences that they each have and know how to make that work and how to work together successfully. And they also know how to dream together and bring those dreams to life. And I have just been so inspired and encouraged by them and their marriage. And so I asked Reena to come and share a little bit of their story and their learnings along the way, as well as their successes to help to inspire courage in each of us, especially for those of us who are in marriage and are facing some of the blood, sweat, and tears that Tim Keller talked about. So thank you so much for listening in to today's conversation with Reena. Reena, thank you so much for joining me today for this conversation for Courage Becomes Her. I'm really glad and grateful to have you with me today.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So let's get to know you a little bit before we launch into our topic today. So where is home?
I live in Kentucky, and I am from the eastern part of the state. So
okay.
I now live in Lexington, but I am from southeastern Kentucky. So now I live where a lot of horse farms are, but that is not where I grew up.
Okay. All right. Makes sense. And no one could tell that you're from Kentucky by your accent at all.
Yeah. I can't hide it. So.
I love it. And I love that I've seen you accused on social media of being Dolly Parton. So I think that's super cute.
Yeah, I'm a big fan, so that's okay.
That's not a bad thing. No, I wouldn't mind that either at all. So, all right. Tell me, what book has transformed your life? I know you love to read like I do.
Oh, I do love to read, and there are so many, but probably one book that really changed a lot of things for me was Zig Ziglar. Probably my favorite is See You at the Top, but anything Zig Ziglar. And I started listening to him on audiobook first, and then I read the books later. So he has a great way of delivering things in audiobooks, but that's probably the one book that really made a change in my life.
Yeah, he's a pretty dynamic person and definitely a dynamic speaker. So I can
Yeah,
certainly understand the audiobook for sure. So
yeah.
good. All right. What has made you laugh or filled your cup in the last day or so?
So every evening after we have supper and I've done everything I need to do around the house and Earl's done what he needs to do, we watch TV together. And it's different things, usually something that makes us laugh. And then we watch decorating shows and or just whatever. And so that always fills my cup.
Oh, it's so good. I love that. And I love that you guys do that together, which I know we'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple minutes, but that's just so sweet that that's something you do together. How about your first concert? What was the first concert you ever went to?
George Jones and Randy Travis.
Okay. Wow. I don't know if I know who George Jones is.
Oh, wow, Earl. I have
I
the
know, sorry. I'm showing
traditional
my
country.
California non-country side of me.
Yes, yes. I've got to send you something to listen to, but he is a classic.
Okay, George Jones. Yeah, and Randy Travis for sure. Totally get that. That's great. What in what sort of a venue?
It was actually in Rupp Arena, which is a big event place here. And it was in the spring, and my parents wanted to do something that I wanted to do. And I had never been to a concert. And I got to choose what we were going to do. And that's what I chose to do.
I
I got to take
love
a
it.
friend. And they had, of course, been to concerts before, and I never had. And I was a huge country music fan. And that's what we did.
Oh, that's great. I love that. How special. What a neat memory with your parents too.
Yeah,
That's a real sweet
I was
memory.
in middle school, and so I was just starting to get interested in going places and doing things. And since we lived in a very rural area, it seemed like something amazing to me to go to something like that.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, that's yeah, big city experience. Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
that's great. So good. All right, what's your do you know your love language and your Enneagram?
So my love language is words of affirmation.
Yep.
So I'm big on that because I really like to tell people how I appreciate them, and I really love to hear it too. So
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, you are so incredible about that. I love just that is something you are constantly doing, whether it's online through social media or in person, of just really making sure that people know that they are appreciated. So
yeah.
that's
So
beautiful.
and then what was the other thing you asked me?
The Enneagram.
Oh, yeah, I have never settled on what I am. I have taken the little free quizzes a couple of times, and it's always something different. And it seems a little bit complicated to me, so I would have to have someone who would interpret it for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that might be a fun thing for us to do in the future together. Just a fun conversation to have. So I have a feeling I know what you probably are, but that'd be fun to figure it out
My
together.
son has a guess too, and I can't remember what it is, but he has told me what he thinks I am.
Okay. All right. Super fun. I love that. I know it's one that you and I have talked a lot about, that you're big on the strengths finder, of knowing
Yeah.
what are your top strengths. And that's a big one for me too. I love knowing those, having those awarenesses. So, all right. We talked your evening. You love to watch shows. So what is the best movie or show that you have watched in the last year-ish?
I would say the one that has made me laugh lately is probably Animal Control.
Oh, I don't even know if I know what that is. What is that?
Gosh, I don't know the name of the actors. It is so funny. It is hilarious. And it is really not the type of show I would normally watch. It's an Earl type of show because he likes the
Okay.
things that really make you laugh. You'll have to look it up. It's very funny.
Okay.
And it's these people they work for an animal control place. And so they're always going to these people's homes or businesses and they're helping them corral
Okay.
an animal. And it is hilarious.
Oh goodness. So is it like an actual like reality TV? Like
No,
it's okay, it's
no,
totally fiction.
it is just comedy. And it just makes me laugh.
Okay.
Doesn't make you think at all, just makes you laugh. One of those
Those
things.
are good. Yeah, those are good for sure. So, and especially a good way to end the day when you get up as early in the morning as you and Earl do. So,
Yeah.
I like that. Okay, last one. What's your current obsession in any genre?
Probably decorating my porches. Really, it's spring, and one of my favorite things to do is sit on the porch. And so I have been obsessed with finding what I'm going to put on my porches.
I love that. Good. Good. We'll talk a little more about that in a couple minutes as well. So, well, thank you. Thanks for letting us get to know you a little bit. So, you and I are kicking off this new series that I have kind of labeled as Journeying Through the Blessings and Burdens of Marriage. And specifically for you and I want for us to talk about what that looks like when you are working together, owning a business together, and dreaming together, which is something that in the little while that I've known you, that I just really love how you and Earl do each of those things well. So you just celebrated your 30th anniversary. Congratulations. That is amazing and incredible. And you've worked together for 20 some of those. Is that right?
Yeah, for probably altogether, probably 24 years of that, we've worked together.
Okay.
We have owned a business together for 20 years. And then we worked together in another dealership. And everybody always asks, but we met when we were in high school. And so we ended up at the same place working after we were already married.
Okay. Got it. Wow. That's incredible. So let's talk a little bit about the journey of intentionally owning a business together. So how did that come about of like saying like what I don't even know what you guys said. Like what was the conversation of okay, we're going to own a business together, we're going to work together, we're going to what did that look like?
So originally we worked in a copier dealership together. Earl started working there first, and then about 3 months later, I started working there. And I was very reluctant to go to work where he was working. Like I was so sick about it, so nervous. My cousin was actually the branch manager. And so he had offered me a job as a telemarketer. And so our jobs were not going to be related at all. Earl was a copier technician. He was out on the road all day. I was going to be in the office. But I still was so sick about it. I was afraid I would get in Earl's way, or like it would
Uh,
get in the way, because we had made a move for him to get this new career, and he was really enjoying it. And I didn't want to cause a problem for him at work.
mm,
But my cousin had encouraged me that he thought I could do well in the role. And Earl was very excited about it. He couldn't wait for us to work together. And I just thought this is going to be really weird. It's really what I thought. And so we worked there about 4 years together, and I moved into outside sales. And our roles were very different because he was in service and I was in sales. And it was kind of funny because in that particular company, it was always sales against service. Like it was a very different role. They always blamed each other for whatever was going
uh-huh.
on.
Hmm.
Sales had sold the wrong machine. Service had made the customer mad, told them that, whatever. And so Earl and I really saw it kind of different because I got to go home and hear why that didn't work, what wasn't working for the customer.
Yeah.
And then Earl saw the side of trying to sell something to a customer and, what you had to go through. So that kind of set us up to work together later on. But we went, and then Earl became a biomed technician inside a hospital. and I stayed home with the boys for a little while. And so actually, he called me one day, and the copier vendor had come in, and he's like, I think we could do this.
Wow.
They were calling on him as a customer. And he just called me and he said, I think we should start a copier company. And I said, okay, I'll see you at supper. Then I started making appointments, but I had been staying home with the boys. I was pretty excited to go back to sales. I was looking at it like, at the time, I was looking at it like I could just set up some appointments, sell a few machines, whatever. I really wasn't thinking long term. We joke all the time. We just wanted to make money. We didn't really think about building a business or having a company, or
Got it.
never dreamed of
Yeah.
having employees. And then, so I made some appointments, went and called on them. And we were doing this on the side at first. Earl was still working inside the hospital during the
Okay.
day. And at night, he was going out and working on copiers.
Wow.
I was calling a lot of schools, janitors were letting us in, and they knew that we were coming. The people I was working with knew we were doing this on the side. And now that I look back, this is 20 years ago, and people were very open to it.
Yes. Yeah, definitely different.
So it was nice, though. I mean, and then at night, sometimes me and the boys would go with him. We had a van, they would watch TV, and I would sit in the car with the boys. We'd have supper on the way in the car. Sometimes it's kind of a treat. If it was a long way away, he had to go. And so eventually I saw that, we kept adding up contracts, and Earl's like, I can't keep doing this at night. We've got to do this full time. And we were giving up health insurance and all the good, vacations and all of those things. And that to me seemed like a huge leap to go full time, and both of us depending on that for our income with two small children. But he was really confident about it. And I said, okay. Before he left, I went out and went to the insurance agency to find out how much health insurance would be. And because I had experience as a child that was so important to me that we had that. And so I remember when I got the quote, it was more than our house payment. But we did it. So that when I found out that I thought we could afford it, I was like, okay. And that was over 20 years ago.
Wow. So how in those, maybe in the early days, but even maybe it's still relevant now as the business has grown, like how did you work through the roles and figure out like, okay, Earl's going to do this part, I'm going to do this part? Like, was it just natural because of what had happened before? Or were there actual conversations that you had to have with one another to figure out like who's going to do what?
We knew right from the beginning that Earl would take care of service. Okay. So if it was a call about what would make a machine work the best, he made those decisions. If it was about what customer, he let me pretty much decide who to call on, who to quote, all of that. And then if I had a question about, will a machine do this, he always made that call. So that division was not hard for us as far as, and still today, it's still that way. If it is a sales question, I'm first call on that. And if it is a service question, he does it. And it's so funny because Earl and I had an attorney, and it was a friend of ours, but you know how the guy's always the guy's friend. And so he wrote up our papers. And so when he did it, he made Earl 51%. And I was 49. No big deal to me. I didn't care. And so we saw him a couple of years ago, and he said, so I was joking with him about it. And he said, he looks at Earl, he was so serious. He said, have you ever had to use that? He was so serious. And we have never, ever had something that we couldn't work out. We may say, but now I do joke with Earl. He on paper, he's the president. So I always say, Mr. President, that'll be something you'll have to decide. And so it's funny, but it really, for him to ask that seems so strange to me because we always just worked it out. Not that we didn't debate about things, but it was never like, we were so dead set against it that somebody had to go the opposite way.
Yeah, that you like got to loggerheads with each other. So,
Uh-huh.
yeah. Yeah. Wow. That is so good and so interesting. And it says so much about you guys that that is the case because I can guarantee you, Corey and I, we would be like at loggerheads like every other day with each other. Like, okay, who breaks the tie, so to speak. So, so fascinating. So now, I mean, you now have nearly a dozen employees. So as it's grown, has that changed at all as far as how you manage the business together and kind of just make those decisions of the business or about the business?
It has changed just with the very first employees that we had were service employees. And I'm kind of an independent kind of person. I love other people, but I kind of like to do my own thing. So it was really hard for me to hire someone on the sales side.
Mm.
I liked just doing it. And so it was very hard for me. But Earl didn't have any problem delegating and adding service and training them. And we needed more, as we grew, we needed more of those. And I felt like I could just do all we needed in sales, really.
Yeah.
I hate to admit that, but that was really how I felt. I just didn't see later I matured enough to where I could see that I was
Mm.
really holding us back by not hiring somebody and by not delegating.
Wow.
So Earl continued to take care of service, decide what parts to order, what supplies, all of that. And then we hired someone in admin. And really, both of us managed that admin person pretty well. We didn't have any trouble with that. It was
Mm.
mostly service related because they had to dispatch service people and they had to put in the orders of what Earl
Got
needed.
it.
And then the only thing that I dealt with them on was customer service stuff.
Yeah.
Those things I dealt with. And at that time, I was still doing billing for contracts, every invoice.
Wow.
And then eventually I started letting go a little bit of that at a time. The real growth point for us that was also very difficult for us is when we got a new computer program
Mm.
and we had new software, and I had all of the service contracts in my head. So I knew when it was supposed to be billed and I would just do an invoice for it.
Yeah.
Well, getting out what was in my head into that software was a process,
Mm-hmm.
a big, big process. And so during that time, I hired our first salesperson because I couldn't do sales and get the contracts out of my head
Yeah.
at the same time. So we
Yeah.
hired a salesperson at that time. And I'm telling you, it's a hard thing for me to
Yeah.
train them, to trust that they would make the right decision,
Yeah.
and to trust that they would call on all the people they needed to. It was
Wow.
very difficult for me. It was like giving up a child. It was so hard. But I finally did it. And then we hired several more after that. But I still did I paid all of the bills at that time and managed that. And then eventually it got more than I could do.
Mm-hmm.
And Earl had his service team where they were doing well. And so he had tried to get me to do this several times. He wanted to help. And I didn't want to let go. And so it was very difficult. But finally, he managed to get me
Convince you that,
to
yeah.
let go of the grip on it. And he
Mm.
started doing more of that side of being more involved in the finances and the HR and all of that. So it's been a big process. And it's probably taken us the last 6 years for me to fully hand that over. And to be honest, he's much better at it than I was. I mean, he's really good at, again, delegating, but also trusting.
Mm.
And it's been a blessing, but it was very difficult.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like he was patient with you to just, let it run its course and, to not like force you before you were ready, which I think that's so thoughtful and kind, that he wasn't, making you move more quickly than you were comfortable with.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. One of the things that comes up a lot in coaching with women clients of mine is either when they own a business together with their husband or they even work together with their husband is figuring out what then that means for the roles at home as well as how you interact with each other at home of like shutting off work. So talk first about like how when you guys have been doing the business, owning the business together, like how did you figure out the roles at home of who does what? And obviously you had the boys were little when you first started PDS. So what did that look like?
At home, we've always been very blessed to kind of divide it pretty well. There's some things that comes natural for me, and other things that Earl does really well with. With the boys, for example, Earl was in charge of sports. And if only one of us could go and it was a sporting event, Earl went. He made all decisions around sports, around coaching, around what gear to get, all of that. And I did everything with education. Now we made decisions together, but I was the first call on that with education. And so I made sure they got their homework done and they were, doing everything they were supposed to at school and anything like that I took care of. Now, we both attended sporting events. We both attended anything with education, but as far as making decisions about it, that's how we divided it. And then at home, we just kind of like Earl always took care of the yard and all of that stuff. And I did a lot of the inside stuff, but he's also very good with that. Like he never has said, this is my job and this is yours. And we kind of, anything that requires perfect order, Earl has to do. He is very detail oriented. He won't get off on something else and forget that he had, something in the washing machine. I will forget. And so
I love that.
We also made a decision to hire extra help when we could in order to be able to, to have a home in order. So when the business got pretty busy and was doing well enough, we hired somebody to help come clean once a week and that kind of stuff because it made me feel better.
Yeah.
I don't think Earl cared one way or another, but he was happy to say, okay, that's good.
Yeah.
So, and then at times when we were really busy, we would hire somebody to come and mow when, Earl didn't have time if he wanted to be everywhere where the boys were for sporting events. So that's how we kind of worked it out.
Yeah.
To make sure that we could do what we wanted to do and needed to do. We kind of got extra help when we could.
That's good.
So it helped.
Yeah, that makes a big difference a lot of times for sure. And then how about shutting off work? Like, because you're in it all day long together, like how did you navigate okay, we get home and we're not going to talk about it? Or like, did you have kind of boundaries there that you set with each other?
We have probably in the last 6 years that has gotten much better. That was probably the hardest thing for us, the most difficult, and it still is a challenge sometimes. For example, we live in a small community and we love our customers and they love us.
Yeah.
But they would call on a Saturday night. The church secretary would call. Not even the church where we attended, churches around that where we knew would call us and they were out of town. And,
wow.
So Earl has gone to many places to take toner, or we have met them at the office to give them toner. And it was very difficult. I also had a very hard time of not thinking about work all of the time. It wasn't to me that I was putting a priority on work over my family, but I felt like I needed I needed work to go well to take care of my family.
Mm-hmm.
And so I let that really, I didn't have good boundaries for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a problem that Earl and I really had to work through. He could let go easier than I could when it was, when it was time to go home. And then there's been, like I said, when people call, and they usually have our cell phone numbers, or they look at our home number up and call.
Wow.
And it was very difficult. That was another thing. The salesperson in me wanted to please them, wanted to do it right now. And so the service side was like services from these hours to these hours.
Right. Yeah.
And so, but Earl he's very helpful. He wants to help people. And so he didn't like the thoughts of somebody being without either. So that probably has been the hardest thing about working together, is that, taking it home and, working through it.
Yeah. Yeah. I can totally understand that. That's a tough one, but good for you guys for trying to make your way through that. So. Hello, friends. Thanks so much for listening to this great conversation with Renee. I just want to ask you super quick if you will send this episode to someone who might need a little bit of inspiration and courage for their marriage. We all know how difficult and hard marriage can be. And so hearing stories like Renee's, where there is inspiration and dreaming together and learning how to navigate different personalities and different characteristics in one another, is just so helpful to us in our marriage journey. So please just share this episode with someone right now, as well as give it a rating and a review on whatever podcast player you're using. Thanks so much. Now back to the conversation with Renee. So when we talked about Enneagram and love language, I just briefly mentioned the Strengths Finder. So one of your top 5 is visionary. And I love that you have had a practice for quite some time of doing vision boarding or vision casting, actually creating, like you do actual tangible, practical, the touchy-feely vision boards, which is so wonderful because a lot of people, have transitioned to digital ones, which can be really cool too. But I love that yours, you actually have things that you can be tactile and touch and whatnot. But you talk about in a podcast or two of yours about kind of the process of getting Earl to buy into the vision boarding concept. And I think he, kind of teased you of thinking like, oh, this is just, one other vision thing of Renee is just some, fun little trend that she's on, that sort of thing. But it stuck with you long enough that at some point in time, he bought into that. So what did that look like to get him on board with, doing vision boarding with you? So
Earl is so different from me, as I have said a million times, but for us to communicate, because I am for example, Earl loves math questions, hates essay questions. It's either right or it's wrong to Earl. There's no in between. But I love essay questions because I feel like I can know something about a lot of things. I can tell you something about it and get half credit. And so this started way back when we were just dating, when we were engaged. I didn't know if we were going to make it to our marriage because I wanted to know what it was going to look like.
Okay.
And so I asked Earl, well, what do you want to be doing? What do you want a year from now? And he said, what? What do you mean? I want to be alive. That is exactly all Earl thought about in the future. And so, of course, like you said, in my Strengths Finders, it's one of the things I'm always thinking about. What's next? I always want to think tomorrow can be better than today. Even if today is wonderful, I still want tomorrow to be even better.
Yeah.
And so when I have always loved setting goals and loved the thought of, what we can do next. And Earl is very much kind of in the moment and how that is. And so when I first mentioned it to him, he had no interest in doing it. you go do it if you want to, but
Mm.
I don't have a need to do that. And I didn't get offended by that because I understood that I do think about it in a different way than he does, and that's okay. But I have been blessed enough that Earl will listen over time.
Mm.
So I will say little things as time goes on. I guess I don't take no for an answer. That I will just point out things along the way. And I have learned to communicate with him better than I was when we were dating.
Mm.
And so I was writing down goals. And one year I did, I went through all my old notebooks, and about over 70% of the goals I wrote down, I was able to attain.
Mm.
And so I had facts and figures to give her.
Uh-huh.
When you talk about, a real number, then he'll listen.
Got it. Yeah.
And
Wow.
so when I would, and I still was not trying to change his mind so much as I was excited about, what I had discovered from going back and looking at the, and so I think over time he just saw that it was working,
Mm.
and then he was willing to buy in.
Hmm. That's so good. I love that. And I mean, in one of your podcast episodes in the last couple of months, like you guys talk about the goals that you set for this year and what you accomplished last year and how you're upping the ante on other ones. And I just love that. I think that's so beautiful. Do you think that by now you both doing it together, like that has had an impact on your marriage in any way?
Oh yeah. So when we started like having goals together, and we talk about our individual goals and our goals as a couple, when we started doing that together and actually seeing them happen,
Mm.
it just made that all that much better.
Yeah.
And, if you can recall when you set a goal and then when you see it happen, it feels really good no matter who you are. If you didn't believe in it before, you're going to start to believe in it
That's
because you
right.
see it happening.
Yeah.
And just, it's like building something together.
Mm.
And I think probably I got the boys on board, of course, before I got Earl on board. And I think he saw the boys getting excited about it
Uh-huh.
and it working for them. I mean, when the boys were younger, we had goals for them around their schoolwork, around sports, around whatever. And I think that got Earl where he was kind of like, well, I might have to try it.
Mm.
And so it's worked out.
Oh, it's so great. I love that. So beautiful. So, most recently on your, well, it maybe has been on your personal vision board for a long time, but you have wanted to have a little house, a farmhouse of some sort, a fixer-upper. And last year, you guys bought a fixer-upper farmhouse together. And that, going back to what you said of your current obsession, has definitely been this, new fun vision project for the two of you together. So talk a little bit about kind of how that process has been for you guys as a married couple doing a fixer-upper project together.
Yeah, that's been very interesting because I really had wanted to do this for a long, long time. And Earl is very cautious about signing up for something that's going to take a lot more time and money than he expects.
Yep.
But a little farmhouse came up for sale, and my brother-in-law called us about it, and we were traveling, and I was so excited. And Earl's like, "Oh, okay, let me talk to Renee about it." And I'm over in the passenger seat, just shaking my head. I can hear my brother-in-law. I'm so excited. And so Earl says, "Yeah, we'll come look at it." And it was across from my mother-in-law, so it joins their farm.
Wow.
And so he had always grown up next to it, and we grew up really close together. So we had passed by it a million times. And so that part was not a hard sale because
Mm.
this is the third house we've owned on this particular road.
Wow.
And so we kind of had both missed having something there, but we didn't want to live there full time. And so this came up, and it seemed pretty small and had a little bit of acreage with it. So he said yes, it was affordable, and I kind of think he thought I wouldn't want to do too much to it right away, and he could just put me off. And he was more interested in the acreage, and the barn and all that. But it had a little house, and we thought it was about 1,000 square feet, but actually what is heated and cooled is only about 700. So it's
Wow.
small.
Yeah.
And one couple had lived there their entire married life, or at least the majority of their married life. And they passed away in the early 2000s, and they were in their 90s.
Wow.
They had 4 kids there. And then their family had kind of inherited it and used it kind of as a vacation kind of spot. So it needed a lot of work. These people built it in 1940, they didn't expect to stay there long. They had planned on building a bigger house, and just for whatever reason never did. And so it needed a lot of work. And so we have managed to where we spend time there now. And I had big plans. I wanted to put in all new cabinets and a new bathroom and do all kinds of stuff, but that did not go along with Earl's plans. And so, as always, we kind of have to, figure out what we're going to do. And so I had to see what I could use that was there. And, all that he, as in typical Earl fashion, he made sure it's safe. There's no holes in it. The roof is fixed. The siding's been redone. It looks good. But as far as fancy, he's not into that. So I had to keep the existing cabinets. I did manage to get new flooring, and we painted everything. And I love it. And I think he does too. But it has been a labor of love for sure, because he's put more work into it than he really wanted to. He will tell you a lot more money than he wanted to. But it's really nice, and it's getting to be spring, and so we can sit on our porch there, and sometimes his parents come by and sit with us, or my brother-in-law, he lives right across the road. So it's really nice. It's really also close to my extended family, so that's really nice. And we've made it work. I love it, even though he didn't let me put new cabinets and all of that in it. And I wanted a new soaking tub. It didn't have none of that, but but it's been really good. It's been a lot of fun. And everybody who has seen it has been amazed in the transformation, and all of that, keeping what we could.
Yes. Oh, well, I think it's absolutely darling and very charming, and definitely a perfect spot for some good porch sitting for sure. So
thank you.
I love that. So wonderful. Okay, Renee, who or what is inspiring courage in you right now?
My boys are inspiring courage in me. I have my oldest just bought his first home, and my youngest is getting married in about 8 weeks. So to see them grow and to see them become adults and all of that, it is just so much fun. I usually make time at least once a week for each of them. If they have time for me, then I'll take them, we'll go to lunch or just have coffee, and it's individual time with them. And that is some of my favorite time each week. I have done that since my oldest started college. We would take that time once a week. And that has, right now, they are inspiring courage in me. Spring also always makes me feel like trying something new.
Yes. Yeah.
So in combination of it being spring and watching my boys take on responsibility and grow, it inspires me to be courageous.
I love that. I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing some of your dreaming and blessings of marriage. I love that. Thank
you.
Mm-hmm. Friends, if you were to ask me who is inspiring courage in me right now, it is people like Renee and Earl and other married couples like them who are not giving up and who are working together to make marriage work. As I shared the quote from Tim Keller in the beginning of today's episode, marriage is hard and is not for the faint of heart. So hearing stories of couples who are learning how to work through their differences and making space for each other and their gifts and their talents and their foibles and quirks is just such a meaningful place for me personally. And I know that it is for many of you as well through conversations that we've had or things that I've heard from you through social media. So I'm just so grateful for Renee for coming and sharing some of their story today. And I'm really looking forward to having further conversations like this with upcoming guests throughout the rest of this series of journeying through the blessings and burdens of marriage. Two final thoughts about Renee. So Renee does vision boarding workshops, and she would love for you to join her for a vision boarding workshop and to learn how to bring your visions and your dreams and your goals to life. So you can reach out to her and connect with her through her Instagram that is linked in the show notes. I would certainly welcome you to do so. And then you're going to want to follow her on TikTok about the Fixer Upper Farmhouse, where she has videos of the progress and the updates of her renovating and designing and styling. And a couple of those videos have had nearly 100,000 views between a couple of those videos. So really fun and exciting for you to follow along through the little house on Marydell that also is linked in the show notes. What an honor to help you to cultivate confidence, courage, and joy in your life and work. Thank you so much for inviting me to journey with you. I look forward to being back with you next week, where we'll hear another story from a woman whom I love and am inspired by and look forward to learning from.